At the Hall of Justice.
You want to say, we've never really announced ourselves. And you say, what's up, everybody? I'm Chase, and then I'll say, I'm Shep. We bring you a nice Thanksgiving special presentation. Yeah. Yeah, I'm ready. You're filming, right?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. What's going on? I'm Chase.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
What the fuck?
Oh, shit. Oh, no. Oh, shit.
I'm Shep.
I got stuck.
What the fuck? Oh, man.
Oh, no. What the fuck, man? What the fuck? I'm so fucking scared right now, guys. Oh, fuck. Oh, man, I think he might have died. I guess he was choking. I guess he was.
Thanks, Shep.
He was.
for the lovely intro to the show.
Always.
Just playing the hits. Playing the hits.
Playing the hits. Another Monday night.
Yes, sir.
You know what that means.
It's a special one tonight. We've got with us, well, you know, I think maybe we should just let him introduce himself.
I vibe with that.
I think it's the best way to do it. We'll play a clip from his movie Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story, to introduce our guest tonight. It's Ash Hamilton.
As Chase pops it up right now.
Hi, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Let's just get started with some basics. Why don't you give me your name, your age, occupation?
My name is Ash Hamilton. I am 45 years old, and I am a filmmaker. And when I'm not making films, I also teach film on the college level, film theory and film production. But I'm probably best known for my work in the horror genre, serving as a producer on films like Camp Death 3 in 2D.
They've been prescribed 2 heaping spoonfuls of death. Camp Death 3 in 2D.
A film based off of my board game property called Slice and Dice.
I'm gonna slice you to pieces.
And also directing the award-winning short film, Play With Me.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Ash Hamilton.
Hey, what's up, man?
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So, of that little segment of the film, is that all true?
It's every bit of it. Much to my chagrin, sometimes it is absolutely 100% true. Yeah.
Before I dive too much into Holes in the Sky, I noticed. I thought I saw it the first time when we sat down to watch the movie yesterday, but then when I pulled this clip, I confirmed it that was Andrea Bang in Camp Death 3 in 2D, who's in one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Kim's Convenience.
Camp Death 3 in 2D is a fantastic little film. If you have not seen it, you need to seek it out. It was my first foray into Canadian horror with this guy Matt Frame, who directed it, and I got to know a lot about Canada. I was a producer on the film and became quite good friends with Matt. And yeah, if you like Canadian horror, or if you don't, but if you want to see a movie that he sped the frame rate up on everything to make it look super silly, you need to watch Camp Death 3 in 2D.
It definitely looks right up our alley. That
Yeah, it sounds
definitely looks
very
interesting.
interesting.
It is a ton of fun. Like it really is.
Um, yeah, so we sat down and we finally watched the movie last night. We enjoyed it.
Oh yeah.
I think first and foremost, do you classify this film as a found footage movie?
Sort of, it falls into that subgenre. But there's a lot of mockumentary there, and it sort of skirts between a few genres. But I think the one that we've had the most success with, and the one we've probably met people who have attached themselves most to it has been found footage. So we'd be very happy to call it found footage because it's done really well in that department.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I had actually just watched before we watched Holes in the Sky. I watched the Found Footage Phenomenon, a documentary on Shutter,
Oh
just
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
chronicling that subgenre and its whole history. And there were a few people that there was the debate of what makes a found footage movie a found footage movie, which after watching Holes in the Sky, I was curious to get your take on that because it's definitely a documentary about a documentary, but I would definitely dub it a found footage as well. Um, I think immediately as soon as we started watching the movie, I was very struck by the similarity of the shit that we do. Just in the fact that we often play ourselves in the things that
Right.
we do. Um,
Hmm.
and when you, especially in that clip that we just showed with all that stuff, like that right out the gate, I was just like, hey, that's familiar. That's familiar territory right there.
You do a lot of stuff like out of convenience. People post the film being released were like, those were really smart decisions, and we're like, no, we really didn't make a lot of smart decisions. We made decisions out of convenience and necessity is what we did. And we knew that we might have the opportunity to catch stuff that was happening off camera. So, originally I said, well, why don't we just call each other by our names? And then if something happens that's really organic off camera, we can still edit it into the film, and not have to worry about me being called Ash or my wife being called Chanel. So it was really like hey, we could cut more corners.
Yeah.
It's like there are no sharp corners. Every corner is nice and beveled. We made sure to cut every single corner that we could to make them nice and rounded throughout the duration of the film. But yeah, that was sort of, our goal was like, hey, we can use everything if we use our real names.
Yeah, that's actually really smart. I think the biggest props I can give this movie, both as a low budget horror film, as something made here in the Midwest, as a found footage movie, is the acting. I was genuinely just
Yeah.
impressed as hell across the board with every single person in this movie and how natural it all seemed. I mean, nobody faltered, and I thought that was so impressive.
Thank you, thank you, and I think that was one of the first things we saw, like, when we were going back and looking footage because we don't have any trained actors in the film. We don't have anyone that you can we've got maybe 1 or 2 people, that have IMDb credits, and mainly it's for being themselves in either, a real documentary or, in some other, project, but, yeah, these were people that we sort of knew, and again, it's like this was all out of convenience, like, we tried to cast the film. I had a film, that we had started on a couple years previous, and COVID just killed it. Just castrated the thing. So, going into this, I was like, okay, I'm still trying to do like a movie, and I'm still trying to cast people, and I had a couple of actors that I was really interested in, and we pursued a couple people initially in the beginning, and it was just a matter of schedules not working out, and we would try to either get them on Zoom or get them over, and there were points where we were waiting like 6 weeks to try to do stuff, and we all just when I say we all, it's like really just me and my wife. We just sort of looked at each other and was like, we can't do this. Like we can't keep waiting this amount of weeks and this amount of weeks to do this because we'll lose momentum, we'll lose initiative. Like we just need to figure out how to do this. and we had people that were just coming over as friends. Either like Sean, who was, we were in a tabletop gaming group with, and some other people. And, we just sort of looked at him and said, hey, one of the great benefits to hanging out at our house is that you get to be in this movie. Yay. Be excited. So we got some people together and we said, hey, and initially we had started writing a script, and it was very wooden. I mean, I thought the dialogue was great, of course, because I wrote it. So I'm sitting there going, good job, Ash, pat myself on the back. And then we get people to, recite the dialogue back, and I'm like, no, this is definitely dialogue. It's very wooden. We're just not getting what we want, because to me, the whole idea was, we've got X amount of money. It's a very small budget. We knew that we were going to spend a lot of time post production just on the few effects that we had. Like the few effects were things that were still sort of out of our range. So we were like, we know we're going to put this here. We know we're going to put this here. But like, if we don't have believable acting, it's just going to stumble. It's going to stumble all over the place. So it's like, if we nail that down, I think we're okay. And we started just interviewing our friends, and it would be like, okay, we gave them dialogue. All this dialogue didn't work. And then it was like, okay, here's the beat that we need to hit. It's like, here's the story beat, and we just need to work it into some of these Q&As. We need to work it in the scene. And a lot of it was just, if we can be conversational, if we can keep this organic, and yet we still hit these beats, we're really good. Like we're good from a position of this will work. And for a lot of people, I hope this isn't too long-winded of an answer, by the way.
No.
But a lot of people, I'm sure, when we first started doing this, thought that it was going to look like we were shooting something in our backyard. And I think that's the fear sometimes you have, because some of that works really well. Like some of the backyard stuff is nice and campy, and you're like, that's funny and that's great. And it appeals to a lot of people because they're like, oh, that would be something that I would film. And you like that. And then there's other times where you're like, I don't want that to look like, a home movie. I want it to look like something a little more cinematic. And you have to try to, sort of ride that little razor's edge to get it to work. So when we were going back over a lot of the footage, because we would, and these were people, I mean, still having to do 9 to 5s and still, living lives, trying to get their schedule around their children and dinner and all that stuff. So, we try to schedule these blocks where we'd get everyone together and say, okay, we've got 5 hours. Let's see how much stuff we can get done in 5 hours. So I was grateful that I had chunks of stuff, just really, really large chunks of stuff, because we'd shoot these interviews, the interview segments where all the interior stuff, we would shoot over hours and hours and hours, and we would just keep rolling. So I had all of this stuff together, and I'm like, okay, well, I should put together like the first 8 minutes of the movie, because I even though we didn't shoot sequentially, like I knew that I had enough for the first 8 minutes before we shot a bunch of other stuff. So I said, maybe if I give people the first 8 minutes, like the people that I'm working with, the people that are helping us out, people that are coming over and acting, and like if we do a really good edit of like the first 8 minutes, and it's, believe me, it's a completely different 8 minutes because of some licensing issue we had with some music, then we'll get them to do the whole thing. Like that was the main thing, was like, when you're not paying people, when you're not paying people like a real production, when you're feeding them for food, or you're bartering with them for their time, you're just always sort of on pins and needles, because you're like, when are they going to tell me they can't do this anymore?
Oh, we know
Right?
all about that.
Oh yeah.
It's like a horrible feeling. It's like, when are they going to tell me, we could be 20% of the way through, we could be 70% of the way through, and they could come over and go, sorry, jury duty, sorry this, sorry that. And then it's, prolonged development for, 2 years, and you're just sitting there, talking about the movie you almost made. And a lot of us talk about movies we almost made. It's like, we got a lot of almost made movies. I mean, as filmmakers, we're all pretty flaky in one regard or another. It's like, as creative people, I've got a lot of stuff that I almost made. So we were pretty sure that it was going to fall
Yeah.
into that category. We were really scared about that.
We got to a point. We're definitely trying to be more deliberate with our projects now, because we always have a mentality of like we just go for it. Like, you know, no matter how we start ambitiously, and then we try to cut it down as realistically as we can to reach some sort of happy
Oh, yeah.
medium. But when we did our series, Summer Camp of Horrors, a couple years ago, um, if you sit down and watch the show, there's no doubt about it that there's a very unsatisfactory ending, by episode 8, and that's because the day we were supposed to finish shooting the show, one of our lead actresses couldn't make it. She was indisposed, we'll say, and threw off the entire shoot day, and we had to rewrite the entire episode on the day because everybody else showed
Oh,
up, and it was one of those things where it was like a main plot line since the first episode, and we were going to wrap it up in this 8th episode. Well, there was no wrap up because we didn't have the actress. So
Yeah, it's
and
like
then
that
we had a
was
lot
the
of
big
that.
wrap up.
Yeah, we had a lot of that. You know, another buddy of mine, we're shooting with him, and he's got, again, the show flipped itself on its head because everybody was supposed to live except for one character in the original version. Um, by the end of it, there was 3 of us left, like standing, surviving. Um, because like we had a buddy who like threw it. He's like, "Yeah, this is great. This is great. Oh, by the way, I'm moving to Florida in a couple weeks." Okay, cool. I guess we'll kill your character off now, and just things like that. So now, whenever we do things, like I said, we're trying to be more deliberate with our upcoming projects, and trying to get a little ahead of things. But we've gone into like the past like couple of things that we've done. We just have basic outlines. We don't even bother with the script because we know anything could happen. Like we are at that level of filmmaking that you're discussing. That's just like we're not paying anybody. Like I would consider you a low budget filmmaker. We're no budget filmmakers. I mean, we have nothing to offer really other than like pizza
It's
most of the time.
the kindness of strangers. Like it
Yeah.
really is, you know.
And luckily we've got other friends who do this, and we support them, they support us, and that's helped a lot. But now we just kind of go into it with like, okay, here's the loose outline, and we already have like plan B through Z going through our heads just in case whatever falls through. But yeah, we definitely understand that.
Yeah, it's just it's sort of it's there's a lot of weirdness when it comes to you know, getting into the idea of I'm doing this daily, I'm doing this weekly, I'm doing this monthly. You know, I had again, I'd done a few short films, and I had worked on a few films with other people, done a lot of editing. Like my background really is in shooting video and editing it, but not really for feature narratives, more for like, you know, corporate culture videos and stuff like that. So um, I already knew how to light and shoot like Q&As and interviews, luckily. So that was also like one of our corners that we were cutting, because I'm like, I know how to make that look good. So it's like if we can make the stuff that's supposed to look good, then I think we're also going to help suspend disbelief. Like if the interview stuff looks very professional, looks like it's shot on decent equipment, you know, if we can edit that stuff together, then the other stuff again will fall into where it needs to fall into, as far as the way it looks, the way it plays, the way it's perceived when it's on screen. So it was always just about like, what do we know? What can we do? What do we have the budget for? Who's available? And like how do we play to our strengths? Because I mean, most of us wake up and we're like, I'm gonna write Star Wars, right? We're gonna write this $200 million space opera. Like that's, you know, the kid in us, that's sort of what we want to do, you know, is we want to write these huge things where it's like, okay, so it opens up with the pyramids actually being spaceships. They start blasting off, and you're like, that's a $2 million page, you know,
Right.
and it's fun to write. Like it's really fun to write. You know, and I've written like that. I think for the better part of my life, I probably wrote like that. I probably wrote for, this is what I would love to see if, I saved a big name producer's life, and their life debt was that they had to make my movie. you know, and that's sort of like, that's like how your movie would get made on the Brady Bunch or something, but it's not how it would get made in real life.
Jessica says, I love the attention to the audio clips to create the creepiness of the film. That was one of my favorite things about it, leaving it up to the viewers' imaginations.
Yeah, that was, and I'm glad that people sort of focused on that too. I've had a lot of people talk about the audio, and we had a really good a composer, this guy Brian Jones, who was local, and again, like Kindness of Strangers, the guy was really good, had done a lot of work. Strangely, had done a lot of work on Bollywood films. Like he had, yeah, he did a lot of work on stuff overseas, and it was like, well, I don't know if we can, put a musical number in here because that's way out of our budget as well, and you don't want to fit me in a chorus line. That's going to be embarrassing. But he was sitting with me, and I was going, hey, this is what I feel for this, and this is what I think this needs. And like, I was always telling him like, let's watch some old X-Files episodes and let's watch stuff like this. And that's sort of, what I had in mind, is that old, like, Mark Snow, where it's just this sort of like creeping, like B sharp that would be in the background and then sort of fade out and stuff. So a lot of the
That
audio,
opening scene gave me chills. It really did. Like with the 911 call, it did make my blood run cold. I was like, man, that's pretty creepy.
yeah, and that's sort of, what we were going for. I mean, because we can't do the outright astonishing, oh my God kind of stuff. So a lot of it was like, how do we rely on audio? How do we how do we make it look like a documentary? That was, and I think strangely enough, even though, there was a lot of found footage in it, our goal was always, if someone were to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they can't sleep, all of me, because that's sort of my life. I wake up all the time and I can't sleep. It's like, and I put stuff on. Like if I were to put this movie on just out of the blue, like how long would it take me to call bullshit? It's like if we would get people to watch it for 15 minutes even and say, fuck, like I think this is an actual movie, or an actual documentary, then like we were very happy. We were very happy, and we got some of that. Like when we first started doing some of the film festivals, we got into some awkward conversations, which is strange in the post Blair Witch world, because with the internet, you can't really, get one over on anybody, right? So, we knew that wasn't really going to happen, and we sort of played it like a parody at times, where we were handing out missing posters, and we had an actual 800 number of people could call. But that was sort of like for the joke side of it, that it was like, ha ha ha, we know that this is not going to fly because, again, it's like, this is post Blair Witch, but there are luckily some moments, especially early on in the film, where it does suspend disbelief enough that we would have people, come to us like during the movie, during some of the screenings, and be like, hey, are you guys okay? Like, is everything can you
working out?
talk about this? Are you able to talk about this? And I was like, oh, this is all bullshit. It's all bullshit. It's all it's like I couldn't even really go with it. I'm like, it's all fictitious. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. Just watch the movie. So, we were very grateful that, some people who were watching it, it did sort of, ring sort of true, where I guess it had enough qualities of the late night, sort of, TLC documentary sort of stuff that it sold it.
Yeah, for sure. Shep, I feel like I keep asking all the questions. You want to dive?
No, I mean, no, I'm just I'm vibing with it. No, I agree. I really enjoyed. My favorite part about it was kind of how you entwine some of the, like, supernatural aspects, into it and whatnot. So it was like, to me, it's like, I was watching, going through and being like, so is it going to be aliens at the end, or is it like some supernatural? Is it is it something else, or whatnot, like I did really enjoy that spot in it.
You did scare the shit out of me at one point. That one jump
Yeah.
scare, and Shep can attest to it. He was sitting right next to me. I got a little too comfortable watching the movie, and I didn't expect that jump scare to happen, and I fucking jumped sky high.
What part was it? I mean, if is
When
it not spoilery?
the guy's
Was it
standing outside, and he like
Oh
going in
yeah,
the shed? Going in the shed, right? Yeah.
I think
yeah.
so.
That's
Well, no, because remember he's like, "Hey, there's somebody
Oh wait.
outside," and
Oh, they
he
jump out.
peeks
Yeah.
and he's like, "Yeah, he's out there," and then he looks that second time, and I'm thinking, "Oh, he's gonna stand there for a minute, and then maybe he'll run after," and I totally was off on the
Yeah.
timing of that, and it scared the living shit out of me. I was like, "Oh my god!" I didn't expect it.
we have an interesting like the location that we shot the film is actually my house, and we are well, we're lucky for the film that we don't have any neighbors. Like we don't really have another house for about a mile. So we're really isolated,
Yeah,
and, we're far enough outside of town that we don't get, like, the glow from the city. We don't get you don't see street lights, you don't see anything. So we've got, like, 60 feet where it looks like planet Earth, like 60 feet, and that's because we have an LED light, a big light outside that covers about a 60-foot circumference. So once you get past that 60 foot, it's anybody's ball game. You have no idea what's out there. It's pitch black. It's very like ominous, it really is. And that was one of the things that we really tried to play up to was, you see a lot of houses that are in towns that are haunted, in films, and you see a lot of places where, would you have to go somewhere it would be easy to get out. Like if you were able to get out of the house, if you were able to, flee your attacker or whatever, then you're in a town. Even stuff like Scream, those houses are like post stamp size property. You've got a house that you could throw a rock at. So there's always this idea that like all I really have to do is get out the door. Once I get out the door, then and you see it a lot in horror films. It's a trope. Like that front door is sometimes your biggest obstacle. We're talking past the killers, past the supernatural presence. That front door is your obstacle. If you can get out that front door, that's your game changer. And then once
Right.
you're outside of the house, you're in the world that has police, and you're in the world that has heroes, but when you're in that house and you're confined to it, forget it. And what we had was that it's just as bad. You go out the front door and you're like, "Oh no, really?" I've got 60 feet of light and then I'm totally done. So we wanted to really play on the idea that this is remote, it's isolated, and there's probably nobody coming down the road for hours. And there's not here. You can realistically be out in my front yard, not see a car for 8 hours. So that idea of this if this event would happen, this would be a place. This would obviously be a place where whatever intelligences would look at and go, yeah, we can do that. We can pencil this one in. This will be an easy one. So it's sort of and the supernatural stuff. I'm glad you mentioned something about that too. I'm a big a podcast and coast to coast guy. I'm a big AM radio guy
Oh
still.
yeah,
Like I'll
yeah, yeah.
coast to coast at night. And I sort of grew up on a lot of the coast to coast stuff, and I always thought the coast to coast stuff was so creepy, and especially 10 years ago or 15 or even 20 years ago, you're listening to it. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and you get that intro, dun, 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 and you knew you were about ready to shit your pants when you heard the intro music to Coast to Coast. And we were listening to a lot of alien abduction stories, and strangely there's this weird aspect of like alien abduction. And at first, like when you see a light in the sky or something, there's a logic chain, and that logic chain is a very human logic chain. So you see a light in the sky and you're like, okay, I'm familiar with that. That's something moving in the sky. That's a craft. It's something physical, something tangible. So if it's physical and tangible, it's moving in the sky, it's probably piloted. It's probably got some kind of intelligence behind it. if that's the case, they have to make it somewhere. So there's probably a factory, there's workers. If there's a factory and workers, it's in a town or a city. Like you have this logic chain. And even though the idea is still that this is an alien vessel, our human logic chain says that it was created in a very similar way that we'd create an aircraft or a car, and it sort of humanizes what it is a little bit. It's like, oh, well, they do things like we do them. And, it's really about them just coming down and going, hey, we haven't talked. And then you meet an alien. And so that's the very like nuts and bolts, craft in the sky kind of thing when it comes to the phenomena. And then you start getting the we've seen an alien, this idea of seeing something. And then it gets batshit crazy. Like abandon all logic, abandon everything it's so like passing strange, so bizarre that this idea of what we know of in our frame of work, and our frame of reference is totally thrown out the window because people start talking about, seeing these entities and hearing deceased loved ones at the same time. They start talking about, things moving almost like poltergeist sort of activity. And it just totally, throws, our idea of what this should be out the window. And we wanted to put some of that into it because I think that when people start talking about the idea of extraterrestrials, the idea of UFOs, they really try to ground it in the logic chain side because it sounds significantly less crazy. So we cherry pick a lot of these stories and we're like, okay, so they saw a light in the sky and then, the light got brighter and then they started having this feeling and then they lost time. And we sort of stop at that narrative. And that's became, sort of the Travis Walton, the communion, all these different stories. It's sort of become this template for the way that the media sort of likes to spin the yarn, and it's like, oh, okay, this is the way it works. And again, it's a very human way to do it. We gotta put it in a box, and the box says that these 4 or 5 things happen. So that's the box. We put it on the box. But the reality of it is when you start, digging into these stories, the stuff that like Whitley Strieber and Travis Walton and the stuff these guys talk about that wasn't part of the film adaptation or wasn't part of the Discovery Channel, documentary or wasn't part of Ancient Aliens or whatever is far more bizarre. It's the stuff that like nobody wants to try to explain because it's so weird. You don't even really know where to start, like, picking around the edges. It's just so crazy.
Oh, I feel that too. And to me, it was like even just, the guy Sean being abducted at one time, that being alluded to. It's like, you would think a traumatic event like that could cause the energy of a poltergeist to then form around him and, follow him around and stuff. Which like I said, I thought I really dug that. It had me guessing until the end. Like, I don't know which is it going to be. Is it going to be this or that? But, it kept, it kept the movie very entertaining, kept me engaged until the very end.
And that is sort of what we wanted to do. We wanted to put all those elements sort of back into an abduction story. That's usually the first elements they take out, and that was sort of our way to establish a little bit of novelty with the film. Was saying like we're going to focus on the stuff that most stories don't focus on, but that we find really interesting. When I hear about the really strange stuff, like instantly my curiosity is piqued. Some people, it's the opposite because there's instant disbelief and they're just like, horseshit, don't want to hear about any of this. For me, it's got to be something solid. It's got to be something tangible. You start putting the supernatural stuff into it, and they just can't make that jump. It's got to be, again, it's got to be that solid craft. But when I start hearing about the other stuff, I'm like, oh, that's interesting, man. That's crazy. Yeah. Like that's stuff that really gets my brain going. Like, what is this stuff that people are experiencing, because as soon as you throw those really weird rogue elements into it, that whole narrative blows up into something, entirely different. Like, what are these things capable of, if they can, if they can do all of this, if they can replicate like a haunting or something. It's like they've got to be even if it is still relying on technology to do it, man, it's so far
Yeah.
beyond our capabilities. It's like the idea of getting from A to B in space. We're wrapping our brains around that now. Like we're looking at it and going, okay, we've been to space, so we understand getting there, and we can understand this idea of our technology keeps advancing. I think the idea that we've got a space station between us is fucking crazy. I mean, the idea of it is still insane to me. So we've gone from, like, how do we keep people from exploding, basically, to they're not only exploding, but they're living out there. And I think we take a look at that accomplishment, we take a look at that achievement, and we can go, okay, I get faster than light travel now, because we've come here to here. At some point in time, again, it's that human logic chain. That logic chain dictates that the technology will keep getting better, and eventually we'll be able to visit planets where we're not, in stasis for years to get there. We'll be able to take that trip and condense it. So we're cool with that, but a technology that, moves matter, a technology that allows for stuff like telepathy and stuff like that. Like it's not that nuts and bolts kind of science that, people are used to exploring. So it's just, we just throw our hands up in the air more often than not.
Right.
I was curious as I was watching it, because the last thing that we did, our last short that we did, was a found footage thing called the Thanksgiving Project, and it was obviously leaning into us like the tropes of Blair Witch and stuff like that.
Right.
And I was curious as I was watching this, because we're always deliberate about which tropes we lean into and which ones we don't. And I was just curious if there were any tropes that you wanted to avoid and ones that you leaned into as you were making it.
One thing that we definitely wanted to avoid, and now in hindsight, it was like, why did I do this to myself? Was we didn't want, it would have been very, very easy for, and people who haven't seen it who are going to listen to this, it would have been very easy for, in the middle of the 911 call, for me to walk outside and we see a light, and that's the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of is that, to me, that Blair Witch trope, where it's like, okay, we've given them bits and pieces throughout the movie. They're invested in the mystery, but we're not going to give them any solution.
Yeah.
We're going to give them just enough to go, maybe I need to go back and rewatch it. Maybe, there's a mythology or a lore behind it that I need to investigate. So that was one trope that I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Like
That definitely sets you aside from most other found footage things, because that right there the argument would have ended. They'd be like, this is found footage, if none of y'all made it out at the end. But that definitely is something that intrigued me about this movie, was the fact that it kept going and that there were survivors. So good call.
And one thing we wanted to do too is we did, even though it's in really small doses and it's for very small amounts of time, which again is unfortunately just a victim of a budget.
Mhm.
But what we wanted to do is, in the last 3 minutes of the movie, we're like, okay, what are people sort of expecting to see, but they think they won't? So they think they're probably not going to see some kind of entity. They think that they're probably not going to see some kind of craft. They think that they're probably not going to see an actual abduction in progress, because that's all of your expensive money shot special effects.
Mhm.
So what we wanted to do, and I'm not going to tell people obviously here what they are going to see,
Right.
but what we wanted to do is we wanted to take everything that we thought people weren't going to see and then say, oh no, you're going to see it. You are going to see it. You might disagree with it, and you might then go, oh, now they showed me too much. which we get that too. It's like, why'd you show us all that? And I hate using that voice because it's like our viewers are much smarter than that, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's like, what we wanted to do is we wanted to go through a list and go, what realistically do we not have the money to do? And that was a conversation that we had. Like, if we had a bigger budget, what could we do? And we took 4 or 5 of those things and we said, let's do it. Let's find a way. It might be a little smoke and mirrors. It might be very, very quick. But let's spend an extra bit of time. Let's spend an extra bit of money, and let's do a couple of these bucket list items at the very end. So that when people are watching it, for those few seconds, it might feel like a film that played itself small but had bigger resources, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was, again, like in hindsight, it was like, when you're editing a film and you're just doing edits, you're just doing transitions and you're color grading and you're doing all the audio engineering and stuff, like there's not a part of your brain that goes, I'd really like to spend about 3 months on 28 seconds of this.
Yeah.
Like, it's not an ask. Like, you don't look at the heavens and go, can I just spend a ton of time and rack my brain and go insane over 28 seconds of a movie when the rest of it, was fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but fairly intuitive. You sort of knew where to make the cuts and everything. And then you get into special effects stuff and your house is draped in green screen for a month.
Mhm.
And, you're looking at it going, oh, so Marvel makes this look pretty easy, but obviously it's not.
Right.
And of course they've got, hundreds of millions of dollars at the disposal and tons of people and the best kind of equipment. And, you're sort of trying to make 28 seconds of a Marvel movie with, the money you've got in your back pocket and the food you got in your fridge. So, you're operating on a different scale entirely.
There was I've talked excessively about this film, and I'm sure I won't stop anytime soon. But Everything Everywhere All at Once that came out last
Oh
year.
yeah.
I have you seen the movie?
Yeah, I was lucky to catch it in IMAX like the last night that it was
in
around.
IMAX. That's rad. That would have been great to see in IMAX.
It was beautiful. It really
It
was.
became my favorite movie of all time. I absolutely loved it. But something that I took away from it as, such a low level filmmaker was the fact that all of the special effects were done by 5 people with Adobe After Effects. And that blew my mind. I was like you said, you go to these Marvel movies and at least half of sitting through the credits is the brick wall of the visual effects teams, and Everything Everywhere did it with 5 dudes in Adobe, and I was just mind blown by that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that wall of names and either it's like remembrance of a great war or like those are the people that perished in the Titanic. Like it's just
Right.
it's
Yeah.
volumes and volumes of names. And then when you look at because I just love filmmaking in general. And I love special effects too, and just how people do it. And I love looking at these big studios and all their resources. And then like the stuff that they're doing with the Mandalorian,
Yeah.
where they're doing effects in real time, which is just to me that's absolutely mind blowing. Like that's the set that I want to get on just for a second, so I
Yeah.
can just run into
Just
the
to
wall
see
by
it.
accident and
Yeah.
go, "This was truly immersive," and I didn't have to put VR goggles on. I was, I was in Star Wars for 20 seconds or 30 seconds without having to pay 3 or 4 grand to go to Disney. Um, like that stuff to me, man, that's crazy. But yeah, the
Sure.
idea that 5 people, did all of that is insane. And looking at just the wealth of effects, that
Mhm.
were in that film, it's impressive. Very,
Yeah.
very impressive.
And to see the behind the scenes on that and to hear some of the breakdowns, it's truly it kind of sinks in. It's like, well, fuck, I can do that. Like it really hit me, and I
It's
was just like,
inspiring, right?
oh, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I also look at all the stuff that probably didn't make it into the movie, the idea of 5 people working on it, and then there was stuff that probably was left on the cutting room floor that just
Yeah.
didn't thematically fit in, or didn't work. We had stuff that we cut. The first cut of this film was over 2 hours, which was crazy, and then we cut like a half an hour out of it, and there was a point where, and I mean, nobody's probably going to see this because by the way, it looks goofy as hell. It didn't work at all. But at one point, like, I go outside because I'm a horrible person and need to catch everything on camera. And there's something that's sort of moving in and out of this tree. And, I get the sensation, my character gets the sensation as I get closer that I've made a mistake. I probably should be out here. I'm getting closer to this thing, and this thing is aware that I'm here. So that scene played a lot longer, by the way. So I fall and I trip and I'm like, log rolling around my yard, and I've got my phone on me, and there's a point where I look up and it's right above me, and we actually did like some CG and like a facial animation and stuff of this weird entity, and then we took that footage and sort of grained it up and stuff, and in the uncut film, it's a piece of footage that has leaked from the film early, and people are talking about the authenticity of it. And there's this tiny little subplot about how like somebody that we had editing the film let the footage leak, and and that people were they had named this thing and it had sort of become viral. But and I worked a long hours on the special effects for this thing, a lot of it in After Effects and doing some stuff in like Cinema 4D and stuff to do some CG and animation and stuff. And it was in the film, and I would just kept shaking my head at it. I'm like, yeah, it's just too much. It's it's just too much, and it hurt because of all the time. I probably spent 3 weeks on that scene alone, and it hurt badly when I realized that I was going to use none of it, like
Yeah.
absolutely none of it. And I'm just like I'm sitting there and my fingers hovering over my mouse, and I'm just like, oh, I'm really gonna do this? Like, I'm really gonna cut it? But it was just, I mean, in my mind, it was goofy. I don't know. I think other
Mhm.
people maybe wouldn't have thought it was goofy, but to me, it took me out of what I was doing. It just felt like too much. It felt like we were trying way too hard, and I think again that when you do see a lot of this footage, even to this day, when people have Retina cameras on their phone, it's like as soon as something spooky happens, forget it. It's out of focus. It's grainy.
Mhm.
Like the digital zoom isn't working for shit. So to have this thing sort of like, in my face, and then for us to take that footage and slow it down to be part of a viral thing that happens, I don't know. I just sadly it just had to go.
It happens. It definitely happens. I'm big on practical effects. I love practical effects,
Oh yeah.
especially in horror. We're big Evil Dead guys, and that
Oh yeah.
shows. It's very apparent in the things that we've worked on. Um, and that's something that Shep and I really enjoyed doing. Is with all of these projects, there's nobody else. We are the crew, the two of us. Sometimes
Oh
we're
yeah.
lucky to have a third person. Lately, we've had a few more, which is nice, but the help goes a long way. That's for damn sure. But
Yeah.
so we have had to learn how to do a lot of those practical effects, and now we really look forward to it. That's like one of the things that we're never quite sure how we're going to do things, but it's always fun to figure it out. And just like we've learned a little bit more every time, and I'm just such a fan, getting all bloody and just doing the crazy shit that we've done. uh, I always say in episode 4 of summer camp, there's a somebody births a demon baby, and the shot goes from the birth happening in the bathtub to the character pulling the baby out and holding it. And I always tell people, and now we're going from the best effect in this show to the worst effect in this show, because the baby's clearly a baby doll that we drew an upside down cross on its head and stuff. But that's the joy of horror comedy, because with the comedy, anything goes, and we could always just lean
yeah.
into anything that we wanted to.
But you find yourself getting nice and resourceful though, which is pretty
Mhm.
cool. And like I'm a big guy. I'm a very solution oriented guy. You know, if something's put in front of me and I don't know how it works, like I sort of obsess over it. Like, how can I make it work? And and of course, in this industry, how can I make it work cheaply? Like, how
Right.
can I make it work inexpensively? So being able to put stuff in front of you and going, how are we going to do this? Exactly, how are we going to make this work? And we had some stuff, like you guys were talking about where you're like, well, okay, we're gonna do it and we're gonna try to do it as practically, or with as much practical effects as absolutely possible. And you find yourself going to some like weird places, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna order a bunch of stuff off of AliExpress online, and we're gonna see what works.
Yep.
And we're gonna see how horrible it is, and if we could make it, less horrible. Because I'm a big Evil Dead guy myself, and I'm a big I'm a big gore person. I'm a big like Gallo film kind of guy. I love Italian horror. I'm a big Fulci and Argento kind of guy. So there's a lot of stuff that I like that it doesn't even really sometimes translate into the stuff that I make
Mhm.
because I don't know if I can do it the way that I want to. And sometimes that stops me because I have a lot of love for stuff, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
like I just don't want to, I don't want to mar my own memory of how much I love it if I just totally take a shit on it by accident and
Yeah.
try
We
to
have
try to
we
make
have a few things like that where we've in the final hour we're like, let's not do this. It's too good. Like it's too good. Let's not do it. Let's try to do it another time. Because otherwise, I've spent a lot of time being told what I can't do in film, and that
oh
just
yeah,
motivated me more and more to that's where we're at now, is where it's like, okay, we want to do this, we're going to do this. And we made summer camp by accident. Like, I mean, we went in with intention, but it became so much bigger by accident. And that was the first time that we cast people, we were shooting on location, all of it with no budget whatsoever.
oh
And we
yeah.
were just rolling with whatever was thrown at us. We actually had a
Yeah.
musical number written into episode 5, I think. And of course, we get to episode 5, we're like, there's no way in hell. We don't even have kids at the summer camp. There's no way in hell we're going to do this musical number. So it's always fun to, think on your feet. Do you have a message here? It says, found footage movie Night Shot was done in one take with no edits. That's a cool one to watch, especially knowing that. It's a French film. I thought that was insane. Check it out if you haven't. It's one of my favorites. Has some great practical effect gore in it too. I'll have to check that one
I
out.
like that.
Oh,
I
Yeah,
like that.
definitely. And,
yeah.
and marvel at something that I will never do
Right.
because I don't have the patience.
We love a good long take. We're
Oh
to,
yeah.
to a fault, absolutely 100%. Because as the editor on these things, we'll do long takes all the time. You'll even see it in the final like product of summer camp and a few other things that we've done, where it's like clearly all we did was the long take. And so like when something needs to be cut, there's this weird jump cut because that's all I had to work with, and
Oh right. Yeah.
we didn't get coverage from other angles and stuff because we're like, do the long take. But we were most impressed with ourselves when we did. Uh, we do have a dance number that opens episode 4, and we did the whole thing in one take, and that was again an accident. Like we just did it, and it was one of those times as a filmmaker that like I was behind the camera and I'm following our main actor, and like we did it the first time, I was like, no, this isn't right. Second time, and then that third time, I was like, I know exactly how we're gonna shoot this scene, and we're gonna do it all in one take. And I'm just like falling behind. I'm fucking sweating. I'm out of breath. It was, I think it ended up being a little over 4 minutes long.
Mm.
The whole scene, and when I yelled cut, I was just like amped. It was just one of those things where I was like, holy fucking shit, how did we just do
Because it
that?
shouldn't have worked, right? I mean,
No,
for all.
there's
Yeah.
no fucking way that should have worked, but it did, and we were so proud of it. It was definitely our crowning jewel for the show.
Happy
Um,
accidents are great things.
you can find our stuff at our YouTube page. That's where most of it is, or chaseandshep.com. You can find everything, our music, our
ChaseandShip.com. Yeah.
shorts, everything. So And don't forget, I mean, obviously, I think you've already seen Holes in the Sky, so But for those of you who haven't, it is available to rent or purchase uh, on video on demand anywhere you like to get your movies. Is it available physical copy? Are there physical
Physical
copies available?
copies are actually available. So you could go to Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Best Buy .com. They're all the major big box retailers are carrying it at least online. I think there's a smattering of them actually in stores physically, but and I'm in the Midwest, so I
I have
have to travel.
I have to ask because my collection back here. Is it available on Blu-ray or is it just DVD?
Right now it's just DVD, and I'm hoping to sort of change that. We've got some stuff that I'd like to add, but the DVD does have a really nice commentary track on it. So we did
Awesome. Yeah.
actually provide a commentary track.
Yeah, I did purchase a copy, a digital copy on
Thank
Vudu.
you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I was like, I might as well buy this thing. I'm sure this won't be the only time I watch this. But I'm a big physical media guy, so I would
Me
definitely
too.
love to own a copy.
Yeah, me
Um,
too. Definitely.
I do know one thing we have not brought up that we wanted to ask you about is this dethroning of the Blair Witch Project
Yeah.
as the most, correct me if I'm wrong, the most awarded found footage movie.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Which was another like happy accident. We were doing the film festival circuit, and like I'll have to admit, like I I feign confidence real well. That's like sort of one of my better qualities. But like, I'm literally just a crippled with anxiety kind of person normally. I just
Mhm, mhm.
I project something else to get through my day. And as we were doing the film, we started putting the film in festivals. And and this is like a horrible thing to do because what you really want to do is you want to like, amp your supporters up and get people to rally behind you. So we had the film made and I submitted to a few festivals early on. And I told the cast, I said, listen, it'll be great if we make it into one festival. Like, I'll be happy if we make it into one festival. We, however, cannot gauge our success on whether or not we make it into a festival. It's a success that we made it. So, I was sort of preparing them, and then we got into. I think I submitted early on to like 7 festivals, and we got into like 5 out of the 7, and I was like, "Oh, that's crazy! I can't believe we got into that many." And then I had to give them my other lack of confidence speech, which was, it's great to be in a festival. We shouldn't expect to win anything. If we win anything, that'll be great. So, like the first festival we were in, was a fairly large one, and we get a hold of the because the person gets a hold of us, and he's like, "Hey, are you guys coming to the festival?" And I was like, I don't know, it was like 6 hours away or something. It was still somewhat regional. Like we could conceivably we could make it there. So he was like, "You guys should." Like, you wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you guys should find a way. So we make it out there, and we got like 4 awards for the film, and then I'm telling everyone we've done a great job. We can't expect to win anything more because we did a great job. And then there was a convention like a week later, a festival like a week later, and you know we get another call, and he's like, "Hey, are you guys going to be at the festival?" And I'm like, "Well, we weren't planning on it because this one's like 8 hours away." And he was like, "You should come to the festival." I'm like, okay, I think yeah, I think we're gonna win something. So we came out there, and and that one we won best feature, and it started just to like more and more we were getting some of these awards, and I was and driving with my wife in the car, and she was like, how many awards do we have? And like and this is gonna I'm gonna come across like a huge asshole, like, I don't know. We just keep getting awards. Like, that's not the mentality that I had. It's like we were just so busy. I had not taken any time to sit down, and because my brain would be like, we've only got 8 when we need 10 or whatever. I'd make some weird thing out of it.
Mhm.
And I don't want to do that. Like, I just want to be grateful. So I try not sometimes to look at that stuff. And I'm just like, no, we've done really well. I know we've done really well. I don't know where we're at. I don't know if we're in like the double digits or anything. And she was like, well, isn't there like a movie in your category that's probably won the most? I'm like, I don't know. And I can't think about it, you know. And and of course she goes in that rabbit hole and she's like, I think we're like 2 awards away from beating out the Blair Witch Project. And I'm like, really? You know, 'cause it's hard to like you want to believe in your own stuff, but then again, like it's hard to believe in your own stuff, you know, because I'm a fan, so I look at other things and go, that's way better than what I've done, you know, but you know, that's just sort of where my brain's at most of the time. And she's like, yeah, I think we're like 2 away. And I said, I think we've got like 3 festivals that we're a selection at. And one of them, by the way, we were up for 13 awards at one festival.
Jeez.
We
That's good.
didn't win a single one. Anyway, and we were definitely at that one.
Yeah.
And it was like we kept hearing the name getting called, and it was like, I think we'll win at least one. Like we were the most nominated film that was there at 13, at which, you know, not necessarily a lucky number anyways. And then it got to like the 13th award, and I'm like, I don't think we're gonna win a damn thing. It's like, I think we better just find a really nice place to eat and say that we had a great time. So it was still a great festival. Everybody was wonderful. But the other festivals, we picked up enough that we were like, oh no, like I think we're 4 or so over what the Blair Witch did. And that was pretty crazy just to have that happen, because I mean, even though the Blair Witch is an indie film, I mean, we made this for nothing, you know, and their budget would have been insane for us to have at what they did for, which, in, you know, by all means, as far as Hollywood is concerned, is nothing, you know, but their nothing is definitely our something. And if we would have had that, we would have been overjoyed, you know, and we had a fraction, a very, very small fraction. So to be able to do that was unexpected, and it was not something that we were necessarily shooting for, because I didn't think we were really going to I hoped we would do well. You know, you have high hopes, but I didn't think that we were going to do that well when we were up against films. We were at a festival that we were up against a Jamie Lee Curtis produced film, and it was like, there's no way we're gonna win. You know, and again, it's like I don't want to be that guy. Like I would look at everybody and go, "Ooh, let's get pumped," and be the big, you know, this is the rival football game scene, you know, and I'm writing out, you know, to tell the English to fuck off or whatever, you know, whatever big scene where I'm rallying people. Like that's what I want. And instead, I'm just like, we're not gonna win that. We're not gonna win anything against Jamie Lee Curtis. And then we actually beat that film out for Best Feature at that festival, and I'm like, how in the hell did that happen? You know, it's like even winning it, I was still like, what did they do? Jamie Lee Curtis is awesome.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it's got to be a great feeling for sure.
Yeah, it's great, and it's sort of weird at the same time, because you know you're still poor, you know, like you're still just going about your life. You know, you sort of feel like you're that guy that won the lottery, but for whatever reason, like the check got tied up for like 3 months, so you're still destitute, and you're like, I can't believe I won the lottery, but it's ramen noodles for dinner. You know, so
it's a little bit like being Peter Parker. You know, just constantly broke and busted, and you're Spider-Man.
It's like he's Spider-Man. I think that's why Spider-Man always appealed to me, was the whole, you know, the dichotomy of trying to do your best and at the same time just being broken, busted all the time.
Yeah. So anything coming down the line? Anything you're working on now?
Yeah, and actually this will probably be the first podcast I've talked about it on. Aside from having two it is. Aside from having 2 scripts that that are done, and that we've been looking at a couple of bigger studios that we're sort of getting attached to for those. We've decided, of course, that I can't really wait on that, because I don't want to spend a year not doing anything waiting for a phone call. So we are going to actually do an anthology. I'll have 1 segment, and we have 4 other directors who are going to be also doing segments of about 18 to 20 minute films, all built around a single idea. And
Love a good anthology.
and we're really sort of excited about it because we're trying to do something much bigger, and mine is going to be more sort of action oriented, which obviously is not Holes in the Sky, which is more of a slow burn kind of thing. We're trying to flip what we do on our heads and say, let's do something that's very fast paced and very kinetic. So we'll be shooting our segment of that in April, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to get everyone's segment and everything possibly done to hit festivals late in the year if we can get it all together in time.
Awesome.
That's what's up.
And it will be horror, by the way, because that's just my wheelhouse. And it's basically all I know how to do.
Yeah, and I don't think
this will be more on the more of practical effects, more gore. So it'll be a departure, obviously from what we've done or what we're known for, and we're going to go sort of full horror with it.
Awesome. And something else I haven't brought up: Horror Fix is your website, correct?
Yeah.
Horrorfix.com for people that need your horror fix. It is a great website for all things horror. I've definitely, obviously I've known about it for like a decade now, and it's still going strong, it seems. So I love to see it. So yeah.
Hell yeah.
Horrorfix.com. Check out Holes in the Sky. Closing thoughts, gentlemen?
I just want to say thanks to everybody who checked it out. I mean, we're living in a day and age where $4.99 can make or break somebody. I mean, with prices of gas, I don't have to get into all of that, but economically, $4.99 or even $14.99 to purchase a movie digitally is a lot for the average American. So everyone that did it, we broke the top 5 for Apple iTunes for watching.
That's what's up.
Nice.
And that's for that's rentals. So that's not just free streaming, which is fantastic. So for everyone who watched that, I can't thank you enough, because when people do talk, when studios talk about indie films, they're talking about $1 million movies. When filmmakers are talking about indie films, they're talking about out of pocket. So anything that any of us can do for another filmmaker, if it's the $3.99, $4.99, I mean, that's really what's keeping our industry alive, is people taking the time out of their busy lives and watching a movie.
Absolutely. Shep, closing thoughts?
I mean, I agree with everything you just said, but I really, like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, and very I'm hyped to check out them 3 little previews that you showed in there real quick. I'm like, and these are they caught my interest real quick. I know the second one, I know I looked over at Chase and I was like, I really like that logo. That looks slick,
That's a full board game, by the way.
Really?
That we developed, that is completely made, and we're just trying to find someone to fabricate the actual pieces. Another victim of COVID, unfortunately, is that we were trying to get the board game produced, and it's much more expensive than it was before COVID, because previous to COVID, people were doing more on-demand printing. And a lot of those on-demand printers unfortunately closed down, and now we're back to the horrible, expensive price breaks that people had to try to achieve, like in the early 2000s, where we're back to having to have 5,000 pieces printed when we were able to do like 25, 50, 100 before. So we're still trying to get it made. And I mean, everything that we're doing now is just the fabrication of it. It's completely done. We've play tested it like hundreds of hours. It's a definitive, very, very much a horror movie lovers horror game, and it plays like a horror movie. Yeah, and so that short film, Slice and Dice, is definitely based on the property. I'll send you guys pictures of the actual game board and all the pieces and everything for it that we developed.
Yeah, we'd love to check it out.
Yeah.
I also enjoyed the film. It's one of those things, you know, again, as no budget filmmakers ourselves, it's always nice to watch something like this. And we have another guy who's been on the show a few times. Tyler Jacob Moore is his name, and he's an actor out there. He's doing things. He's in Shameless, all sorts of other shit. And he's also from Vermilion County, and so we definitely
That's
love
fantastic.
having the Vermilion County peeps here on the show. To Because I mean, you know, growing up, I've always been such a big movie nerd. I mean, since I was, you know, like 4 years old, I've always known I want to work in the film industry. I've never faltered on that. That's always what I've wanted to do. And obviously, growing up in a small town in the Midwest, sometimes you have that feeling of like, I don't know, you know, like maybe I got to go somewhere to do it. But people like you, people like Tyler, you know, it is inspiring, and I love to see everybody succeed. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah.
And if you ever need a Jay and Silent Bob type duo for any upcoming projects, we're always down.
I got just the thing for you guys that we can talk about off the air if you want.
Hell yeah.
Oh, I'm down.
Where
with
not
that.
enough people are snatching up Chase and Shep outside of Chase and Shep properties. So we would love to act in other people's stuff for sure. So all right. Well, yeah, thanks again. Go check out Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. Thank you, Jessica, for tuning in and contributing to the conversation. We always enjoy that. Yeah, all right. Let me awkwardly get the outro video going. All right.
Get the outro video going.
Peace.
He's still a clicking.